This episode of Rotten Reviews is going to be one of my contrarian episodes. I'm going to take a look at the 2019 film Six Underground with Ryan Reynolds and others, but I'll say they're forgettable others. So let's just say this is a Ryan Reynolds action vehicle. It has a 36% on the tomato meter and a 63% on the audience score. 63% meaning that it is certainly not rotten by Rotten Tomatoes audience measure. It has 2,393 audience reviews. Not a whole lot, not a whole lot at all. In fact, that's almost a tiny amount compared to any other released film, and that probably has something to do with the fact that this was recently released straight to Netflix, and it takes people a while on Netflix to get around to watching something new that just gets dropped onto the main screen when they're booting up their Netflix. And so it's not surprising that judging that this just came to Netflix in the last 60 days or so, there aren't very many reviews, in fact a tiny amount. But I'm going to be contrarian, and I'm going to say that personally I felt like this deserved to be in the rotten category. Not by much, maybe just down 58, 57%. I would have found that much more fair on the audience number, because in my opinion, this was Michael Bay at his best as far as delivering an action film, car chases, explosions, etc. It's better than a lot of Michael Bay's other material. It's certainly better than what he did in Transformers, because all the action in this is very much watchable. It's not all cut up and edited in ways that you can't tell what the hell's going on. In this movie, in Six Underground, all the action, you can tell what's going on. The car chase is fantastic. It's very well done. It's quite original. You can tell a lot of care went into it, a lot of budget went into it, and particularly I really love this film for that car chase. I don't like a lot of the other aspects of this film, like the story. These six characters that fake their deaths and then they go on to work for a billionaire's version of a Mission Impossible force led by Ryan Reynolds. Their stories just feel too shallow. I couldn't get into their characters, the relationships they had between each other. It didn't work for me. I thought a lot of the humor, it didn't land right. And I thought most disappointingly, Ryan Reynolds' humor, his one-liners that we've really seen shine in things like Deadpool, they don't work too well in this. Like, I didn't really get a laugh out of it. I thought it just wasn't delivered right, and it just wasn't it wasn't what we're used to with Ryan Reynolds, but you could tell he was trying to do his style of humor. Just didn't work out that well for me. And but again, I thought the in particular the car chase was fantastic. I thought some of the stuff on the building at the end with the pool was pretty good, although I could tell that the water effects from the pool were not exactly up to par on the CGI and were a little bit unrealistic. But if you just want straight up action, this delivers all the way from front to back. It's straight up action. You're gonna get cardboard characters to go along with it, though. And the other big flaw I found in this film, that I couldn't tell what was going on exactly with the narration, because it's done, at least half of this film is done in flashback style, where you're seeing flashbacks on the different characters and their relationships and how they met Ryan Reynolds' character, how they got on board this impossible mission force of his. But it's very confusing because it's not done in a particular order, and there's no real logic to it. You think there is, but the more flashbacks they use, the more it just I couldn't quite tell if I was in a flashback or I wasn't some of the time, and it felt very disjointed. And it didn't stop doing that until I think more than half of its running time, where it just became a chronological front to back film. But this is a very long movie. It's over 2 hours. It's 2 hours and 8 minutes long, and it felt like 1 hour of it was just a sequence of loosely connected flashbacks. It didn't work for me. It didn't work for me. But man, was that initial car chase stuff really working for me. But once I started to put thought into it, a little more thought into the logistics of it, and as the running time got more and more past that car chase, it just went into rotten territory for me. So let's go into the audience reviews and take a look and see what they say. And I'm only going to take a look at 3-star and below reviews, because this is rotten reviews after all. And first, I'm going to say I think this should have 2.5 stars, not quite 3 stars, and I've already given you most of my reasoning on that. I say this peaks out at 2.5 stars. It's watchable, but your thumb may hover over the fast forward button. It may come close to doing that, because it feels long. It is long, and it feels very long, despite having nonstop action in that most of that running time. Um, 46 minutes ago, 2 stars. I was a bit disappointed in the story. Ryan Reynolds' charisma was the only thing carrying the story. It wasn't bad per se, but there wasn't much there to hook me. Too much of the action seemed almost randomly inserted. I didn't feel invested in the story's movement. Yeah, it was hard to like move along with the story, with the goal, because too much of it was flashbacks. And just to break it down real simple, the goal of the group in the story is that they need to remove a dictator of a Middle Eastern country who's very much like a cartoonish copy of Saddam Hussein, and they want to replace him, remove him from power, and replace him with his brother, who's supposedly going to be a more benevolent dictator. He's going to try to bring about democracy in this country, which is it's a country that looks like Bahrain, or it looks like the UAE somewhere, or a combination of those two. A lot more modern than Iraq, certainly, but it is kind of like said to be a country like Saddam's Iraq back in the day, but much more modern. And yeah, they just want to get rid of this Saddam Hussein-like character and replace him with his brother, and that's what their Mission Impossible task force type group is trying to do. Ryan Reynolds is a billionaire that runs this whole thing, and he explains why, as a billionaire, he made his billions off of cell phone technology, and he's kept his name out of the press, and he's decided to run this Mission Impossible type group in secret. And he does explain why he's doing this, his motivation in the story, but it doesn't feel real. It feels too cardboard cutout. It doesn't feel like, it doesn't have emotional bite to it where you're sympathetic with it. So yeah, it just can't climb above 2.5 stars. Not in my opinion, and not in other people's, I would assume. But I'm going to ignore all 4 and 5 star fanboys, because I've already said the action is fantastic. I'm not here to just say that Michael Bay is good at making an action film. He is. We know he is. So that's all you're going to get from this 4 and 5 stars. I want to find out what the flaws are. And here we have another one from 9 hours ago, 1.5 stars. Way too over the top for a weak script. I like Ryan Reynolds, but he doesn't have to have the Deadpool personality in every movie now, does he? Bullets and explosions everywhere, and only the bad guys seem to get hit. Yeah, it's kind of like an over-the-top episode of the A-Team in a lot of ways. The A-Team from back in the 80s, where hundreds of rounds of ammunition are being expended, and bullets are blazing past people and from every direction, and explosions going off, and yet very few main characters end up with more than a scratch, or more than just being sweaty and out of breath. So yeah, there's that, but it is an action movie. That's not the biggest problem with this at all. I think the biggest problem with this, again, is in the story. Like, you just don't feel invested in these characters. 2 stars from 12 hours ago. This is a series of product placements and ad montages, sometimes strung together, pretending to be a coherent movie, garnished with lots of slow-motion helicopters, explosions, helicopters, car chases, sexy female backsides, and senseless sex scenes, and oh, some dialogues. I'll largely agree with all that. I noticed there was a lot of alcohol product placement. We got to see a lot of bottles of different alcohol front and center, and it was definitely product placement. They definitely paid for a lot of this movie. Mostly all alcohol product placement. There was sex scenes that didn't really do anything except give you something to look at. They didn't really make the plot go one way or the other. Car chases, I'll say the car chases were very well done. I'll give it that. But again, we needed more. We needed something that had us emotionally invested, and I wasn't emotionally invested. There was just a lot of stuff to look at. So I'll agree with this 2-star review. Here's our 1-star or half-a-star review from 15 hours ago, and I'm filming this on December 26th of 2019, so You can figure out the exact time, 15 hours ago. They apparently had nothing better to do on Christmas but to write this review, so it must be important. Let's read it. Half a star. This film will thrill fans of Michael Bay, but everyone else might be smacking their heads. A typical Michael Bay film with a lot of fast edited action scenes. The story is threadbare, and I didn't really care for the characters. I love Ryan Reynolds, but I couldn't help but feel I was watching Ryan play Ryan, or Deadpool minus the humor. Yeah. It's also just over 2 hours long, so tightening up the action to shorten length, fleshing out the characters, and providing some more substantial backstory would have been a smarter choice. Yes, I agree 100% with that review. It was too long. If it was, it could have been that long, but they needed to have all those flashbacks do a little bit more on the emotional work that we needed to go along with these characters, and they didn't. And it felt long. At the end of this, you're just wondering, you're checking your watch at the end of this, despite being solid action at the end. Yeah, and it felt like Deadpool minus the humor. He tried that type of humor, but it didn't work. And yeah, it's like Ryan Reynolds didn't play himself very effectively. That's how it felt, basically. Half a star. That's a repeat. Or actually, no, half a star again from 15 hours ago. Reynolds/Bay are trying to build a new franchise off of the old billionaire vigilante meme in the model of the Italian Job. It's loud, snide, and predictable, which is a shame coming from Ryan Reynolds, who has shown himself to be a funny and nuanced writer. The dialogue had the annoyed and desperate strain of someone screaming to be heard. In the beginning, this strain was literally over gunfire and sound effects, and since Bay can't direct anything without things exploding, Reynolds is left shouting. Yeah, it's basically, but you know what? I didn't find the loudness of the action to be the problem. I found that the actual soundtrack was a little bit too heavy-handed. It had a very heavy-handed soundtrack that was trying to be edgy, and it was very loud and overpowering, and it was just too much. It was too heavy-handed. They should have cut back that soundtrack because it was straight up music, and it was too much. I think it's like the difference between somebody punching me in the face and somebody else just giving me a light slap. I'd rather have the light slap. The music was just punching me in the face through this whole thing. And even though some of the music, I actually enjoyed the sound of the music. I actually liked some of those tracks. It was just too heavy-handed and distracting from what was going on. But let's move on. 3 stars, 16 hours ago. Upon the first scene with the car chase, I felt it was B average at best, and I couldn't take it seriously with the characters acting comedic and then trying to switch over tone serious. Yeah, the comedy didn't work. They tried. You could see where they were trying, and it just didn't land. I don't know why exactly. I'm not a comedy expert. I'm not a comedy writer, but it just didn't land like it was supposed to. It was there. Just didn't work. I don't know why. Can't put my finger on it exactly, but yeah, I could tell right after that car chase. That car chase, the only real flaw I found with it, as a car chase, it's like I said, it's fantastic. The only flaw it had is one of the characters just happened to be standing on top of a very tall building, and he had to parkour his way down to the car, and it was never explained why he was up there to begin with. Was he a lookout? Was he up there to take a look at something? I don't know. It doesn't really explain that. It was just there to be cool, showing that he could do all this parkour type of action stuff and make it to the car during the car chase. That was the only flaw really there. Otherwise, it was after the car chase was over that I started to really have problems with the movie. 3 stars, 21 hours ago. This movie is like Netflix asked Michael Bay to make a movie like Fast and Furious mixed with Ocean's 11, mixed with Mission Impossible. Is a good movie for Sunday afternoon. Yeah, I'll agree with that, but not quite 3 stars, 2.5 stars. Here's one 2.5 stars from 21 hours ago. I mean, it's pretty basic, but Ryan Reynolds makes you giggle sometimes. Actually, no. He didn't even do that. His humor didn't land in this movie at all. 2 stars. Typical Michael Bay movie. A lot of action and garbage, stupid plot. So many senseless and unrealistic scenes. I was okay to watch, but it's overall a bad movie. Yeah, I'll agree. It's okay to watch this once, but yeah, by the end of it, you're going, well, yeah, that's Netflix. Because if you had seen it in theater, I don't know if you would have been happy paying like, $16 for it or something and then buying your popcorn and stuff. Yeah, you probably wouldn't have liked this much. Not for that price. Half a star, 22 hours ago. That's an hour of my life I am not getting back. I never review movies, but this was so bad I felt a social duty to come and warn people not to watch it. Clich Central, the evil dictator of Turkestan, called something of why isn't the evil country ever located in Western Europe and with land ruled by a son? Say the evil dictator of Turgaland, part of the former United Kingdom ruled by the evil dictator Mr. Smithson. Take it from there. It's got all the sad cliches of Hollywood movies without any of the saving grace. Yeah, it's one of these stands. A lot of action movies do this. They make up a name and then put "stan" on the end of it. Turkmenistan, Turkestan, Turgestan, Benistan. Like you can make up a million of them off the top of your head. That's why they do it like this, because geography-wise, Americans are so out of touch with, the middle. When you get around to actual the stands, the actual real life stand countries that end with stand, Americans can't even find them on a map, most Americans. So that's why Hollywood just makes up one of them, and you can just kind of hand wave it away that it's a little country in there somewhere. But the thing that's off-putting about that in this film is that it's definitely Dubai or somewhere in the UAE, very modern, high tech, very well developed, almost a tourist haven, or it could have been in Bahrain if Bahrain has a setting like that too. But it was supposed to be one of the stand countries and it just didn't work. And clearly, the dictator was definitely a carbon cutout of Saddam Hussein. Even he mentioned stuff like he actually made fun of that himself in his own dialogue. So it was okay for an action movie, but if you're trying to actually put some logic to it, and you're going to nitpick it for that, well, every other action movie out there has the same kind of weird cliche stuff going on. So I don't fault the movie just for that. 2 stars, one day ago. Good cast, bad script, classic Michael Bay. I'll agree with that. Although I think Michael Bay, he does better in this than he did in the Transformers movies, because in the Transformers movies, Michael Bay, oh my God, his action scenes are so cut up and shaky cammed, you can't even tell what the hell's going on. When you say Michael Bay, immediately I'm thinking about watching an action scene where there's 2 or 3 people shooting at each other and I can't even tell what the hell's going on. That's what I think of when I think of Michael Bay. But in this one, I didn't actually know it was Michael Bay until I looked it up, because the car chase is like better than what he usually does. It's more cohesive than what he usually does. The action in this, even when you do have a bunch of people shooting at each other in a confined area, it's done better than what I've seen from Michael Bay. It didn't have the feel that he gives me, no, the shaky cam wasn't over the top. It wasn't all cut up where you couldn't tell from one second to the next what the hell you were looking at. No, this was actually competently done. And so if Michael Bay would just stick to this style of doing it, I wouldn't have such a bad opinion of him, and I'm sure a lot of other people wouldn't either. I didn't actually recognize this as Michael Bay until I looked it up, and that's a good thing. That really is. Half a star, one day ago. Useless, the most useless film of the year. Poorly thought, poorly produced, poorly directed, and poorly acted. Above all, let's get a cut in making Reynolds act like he always wears Deadpool. To say that Six Underground is a Z-series film would be a compliment. Yeah, if you're into Deadpool, you'll see him doing the same type of humor, but it just doesn't land here. It doesn't work here, and I don't know exactly why, but it just doesn't. Half a star, one day ago. Cars, parkour, guns, action, and nothing more. Just good guys fighting with the bad guys. Don't waste your time with this movie. Yeah, I'll give it that. I'll largely agree. It has way too many scenes in it just to show you the people fighting in different ways and all the weird ways Michael Bay can do it. That's Michael Bay. The 2 hours running time, if you took out the unnecessary fight scenes that a regular action movie would have, it wouldn't have all these fight scenes going on. It would be like a 1 hour and 1 hour 40-minute film. There's like 25, 30 minutes too much of action in this. But the reason I say that is because I felt like fast forwarding some of it at the end, and That's not the way action should really strike me. It was just a little bit too much action. Half a star 2 days ago. Horrible. I should get a trophy for watching 30 minutes in. I had to stop after the free the democracy loving brother of the dictator because red blooded American style freedom fuck yeah plan was explained with cups and a sugar shaker. Premise sucks, plot sucks, visuals were over the top, non-stop action for the first 15 minutes straight in true Michael Bay fashion, sensory overload that loses all meaning quickly and leaves you bored. If this movie went further and aimed to be Tropic Thunder type satire, yeah, if it had turned itself into a satire, it would have been better, but a little bit too much serious action and too much serious sex scenes going on. You'd have to cut all that out too. I don't know if it would exactly work as a satire, but they do bring up something kind of weird at the beginning when Ryan Reynolds' character is explaining his plan to topple the dictator. He does use like restaurant plastic cups and sugar shakers and stuff, and it's completely pointless. And I even think the characters make fun of that at some point, and they do because it's so dumb. And I'm wondering who the writer was, because it's like the writer wrote that and then he didn't have time to think of something better, so he just left that in and then wrote some of the characters to make fun of his writing to try to hand wave that away. There was a lot of that in this film. It's like the writing needed more than one pass and they left the rough draft in and just kind of like tweaked it to make fun of the rough drafty type of stuff in it. It needed another couple of passes on the writing, definitely. 1.5 stars 2 days ago. So I can imagine that Netflix called up Michael Bay, gave him a $150 million budget, and said, make Hobbs and Shaw, but with 6 protagonists. It's rated R, and make it as dumb as you possibly can. He most likely responded with, yes, I'm the one who can watch a Michael Bay movie, and I've enjoyed some of his films in the past. I actually like most of the Transformers installments. 13 Hours I thought was fantastic. I also liked The Rock and Armageddon. This film, however, was just way too stupid. Yeah, I'll disagree. I think everything but the first Transformers is complete shit. It gets worse. The first one had bad stuff in it from Michael Bay, and it was still a good movie in my opinion. And then we get the Transformers #2, and everyone after that got worse and worse, and Michael Bay just even got worse and worse in his crazy, chopped up, shaky cam action. So I disagree on all that. But I agree those other movies are good movies of his. And yes, I agree that that could have been what happened. This very much was like Hobbs and Shaw, but with 6 protagonists and rated R and dumb as you can. Yes, that's largely true, believe it or not. 2.5 stars 2 days ago. Cool concept, fun, spastic action, not well directed. Bay is capable of more. Ryan Reynolds keeps the movie from being below average. Not really. If his humor had worked, this would have been a 3-star movie, in my opinion, but his humor never worked, and so 2.5 stars. 2.5 stars from 2 days ago. There were so many car chases and explosions and so little story or other redeeming qualities that I tried to watch it twice and fell asleep both times, and I like car chases and explosions. Yeah, there's just so much of it that like halfway through you may actually find yourself nodding off, because you can only have so much action if it doesn't have emotional relevancy to other stuff. You have to be invested in it. You have to think there's some kind of, you have to worry about something happening to one of the good guys, and you don't, because they're just so good at what they do that it's like Mission Impossible that never fails. That does get kind of boring. 1 star 2 days ago. The women are good for effing. The young hot British guy doesn't get any. The Latin X guy is stupid as hell. Unengaging characters in a film that feels like spare parts from similar films like it. Half a star 2 days ago. Absolute garbage. Words cannot even begin to describe how appallingly bad this movie is. 1 star. This movie is a run-of-the-mill Michael Bay film. Everything about it sucks or is subpar. Some action parts are cool, others are completely over the top. Characters are bland, and the story is so bad it's hard to follow. 3 stars. Ryan Reynolds shines in this movie, and going into it acknowledging the gratuity in the action scenes makes this enjoyable, but screen time could probably be trimmed by at least 30 minutes. I'll agree with that. They could have cut it 30 minutes. They should have. 2.5 stars. The problem here is not the directing of Michael Bay, it is the god-awful writing containing countless cliches and pounds of cheese, as well as endless one-liners throughout its runtime that are sure to make the cringe shudder all the way through your spine. Yeah, largely agree. Half a star, 2 days ago. Shit, it's like a satire, but not funny. Okay, let's move on. 1 star, 2 days ago. The Faster and the Furiousest Michael Bay edition. A frenetic and absurdly overblown copycat that lacks the heart of that storied franchise. I'm all for a good action movie, but this is, on every level, a high fructose eyeball assault. Nice wordplay there. 3 stars. One can enjoy a good boom boom bang bang Michael Bay movie from time to time. 1 star. Good lord, this should have been made 10 years ago. Even then it would have been bad. It's a combo of Fast and the Furious, parkour, bad humor, and crappy writing. I think Ryan Reynolds thinks he can pull off anything after Deadpool, even though that wasn't that inventive. Yeah, it does come across that way, that Ryan Reynolds thought his humor would work really well in this. He tried to do the same thing as Deadpool, but it just doesn't work for some reason. 1 star, 3 days ago. Not a great flick. Tons of action that makes 0 sense. Go in with low expectations. Yeah. 2 stars. The whole movie feels like some high-budget home movie TikTok fever dream. The cast can't even save the movie from the unoriginal script. Well, there isn't much of a cast. I'll just say that Ryan Reynolds is the only one that's got the name recognition. I recognize one other cast member. The rest of them I've never seen before, or if I have, I forgot about them. So maybe someday there'll be something, but this is just a Ryan Reynolds vehicle. The cast, nothing special. 1 star, 3 days ago. Most of the actions are typically boring. Almost got dizzy watching this crap movie. Well, I'll agree on the parkour scene. Sometimes there's a little bit too much first-person point of view on the parkour, and sometimes there's a little bit too much first-person gun point of view on some of the gunplay. Not as bad as like Doom, and not as bad as some of the other stuff like Hardcore Henry, but it's like it gives you a tease of that here and there, and it's a little bit much because of the runtime. You see it quite a number of times. 1 star, 3 days ago. 6 minutes in, and my God, you can tell it's Michael Bay film with Ryan Reynolds playing Ryan Reynolds. Switched it off, but bloody awful. 2 stars. This film is explosions, failed comedic one-liners, and macho characters, nothing much more. Half a star. This movie sucks. It's a boring experience. Well, I'll leave it at that. Obviously, there's enough of the audience that really enjoyed it for what it was, so it's not rotten, at least not yet. But in my opinion, it probably should be. It should be under 60%, just enough to make it rotten, at least to give people a warning on this. I didn't fall asleep watching it. I really appreciated, like I said, the opening car chase. I thought it was well done. But it just got, over the top with action with nothing of substance underneath to back it up, and the humor fell flat. So I don't recommend, unless you've got nothing else to do, it's the day after Christmas and this is up at the top of your Netflix queue. Go ahead and watch it, but don't take time out from something more important to watch this, certainly. And I will see you on the next episode of Rotten Reviews.